Good morning and happy 2021. Welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Brigida Vieira, a member of this loving community. Reverend Lydia is on a brief break this Sunday, but is in the audience. I see her in there, and she returns this week. Today, I'm joined by the lovely service associate, Haley Anderson, and we have a real musical treat this morning. Ted Coriath and Emily Jaworski-Coriath are singing our lovely hymns, and we have two live performances by visionary musical artist Kid Astronaut. And we have so much gratitude for our two tech ushers today, Don Price and Bill Beachley, who keep our service running very smoothly. And then there are all of you, each one of you in your little boxes. This community is what it is because of your presence. As we join together, we want to acknowledge that our community is located on the lands once stewarded by the Arapaho, Ute, Sioux, and Cheyenne people. Our congregation honors Indigenous legacy and respects the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. As I say the welcome words today, I invite you to shift into that gallery mode if you haven't done so already, and scroll through each screen so you can experience the lovely diversity of this congregation, because without it and without you, there would be no us. You are all welcome here today. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here today. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here today. In all the ways you make your living and the places you are from, you are welcome here. Christian, pagan, humanist, Jew, Buddhist, mystic, Muslim, Unitarian, Universalist, with all of the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. No matter how long you are away, know how soon you shall return, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. And we have a few announcements this morning. You are all invited to join Julica Herman de la Fuente for an interactive two-part workshop on inclusivity and anti-racism in our Boulder Valley community. The first workshop is today from 3 to 4:30, and the link for more information and to register should be going in the chat, and it is. Next Sunday on January 10th, you can come learn a short history lesson on Unitarian Universalist history, because Reverend Lydia is offering a UU Roots class in the breakout room following the service. So mark your calendar. Also, our adult faith formation team is sponsoring an 8-week discussion and reflection on our 7 UU guiding principles. The group starts next Sunday, January 10th, and will meet before the service. For more information and to join the group, you can email Paul Brentinson. His contact information is in the chat. There will also be a talk back discussion with Haley and me in a breakout room following the service. You can join us if you want to dive deeper into this topic or even share what may have moved you today. And our community is looking to expand its audiovisual team. Don Price is going to share more information.
Thanks. I'm Don Price. This is a public service announcement. We're looking for people to help with the audio-visual work during the Sunday services. It takes 2 of us to run a service, and there are only 4 of us. So a few more hands would be helpful. It is not a hard job. We will provide training, and we'll let you get your feet wet before you jump in completely. There will be a breakout room after today's service for questions and answers for anyone that's interested. If I can do this with no background in AV, you can too. And we'd really appreciate the help. Thanks.
And lastly, if you are new here, we are so glad that you found us. And we hope that in this virtual community, you can experience the warmth and love of this congregation. In January, our congregation is exploring, what does it mean to be a people of imagination? Each Sunday is different here, so please do come back a few times to really get to know us. If you want to get better connected, please see the chat window for the link for our first times visitor page, or you can email your information to our office manager, Carol, at officemanager@bvuf.org. Her email address is in the chat window as well. And do be sure to check out the fellowship calendar and Connections Weekly for all of the opportunities that help us stay connected. If any new visitors would like to introduce yourself into the chat, please do. We love to know who is among us. And all are invited to stay for a virtual coffee hour following the service, or you can join one of the other offerings we just spoke about. Okay, if you have a chalice at home, you can light it with me as I light our chalice. So we know where all of our chalices are, please write in the chat, chalice lit in the name of your town. And you can say the words along with me as I light the chalice, and I will go slowly so you can all follow along. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I will scene our bowl once again, inviting it to draw you deeper into the present moment and into a time of sacred silence.
All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. These words mark the beginning of a scripture for a new way of life found in Octavia Butler's book, A Parable of the Sower. This book puts the experiences of people of color at the center of a dystopian sci-fi novel, as its characters learn how to survive and will their way into the future. This work lies within a larger artistic genre called Afrofuturism. Afrofuturism arose from the recognition by Black authors and musicians that works of science fiction often only show the future for white faces. They counter this narrative in their art by boldly claiming that Black people will be in the future, which in itself is considered a radical statement. Afrofuturism declares that Black people can and will become the main characters of the future in which they have the power to change their destiny and maybe even change God. Afrofuturism imagines a future of profound change. Here in the present, we are still struggling with the years of tumultuous changes to our democracy, our environment, and our health. We have wondered how we will survive as we become increasingly aware that the way our political, healthcare, economic, and ecological systems currently function lack the stability to carry us all into the future. Today, Brigida and I will share with you the lessons we have learned from Octavia Butler and Afrofuturism as we imagine a radically different way of living into the future. But now we must take care of the present with our offertory. Generosity is a spiritual practice of this congregation. When we offer our time, talents, and treasure, we deepen our engagement and become part of building the beloved community we imagine together. Usually, half of our offering goes to a nonprofit organization whose mission is aligned with ours to spread the warmth and compassion we strive to cultivate here at the fellowship. This Sunday, our entire offering will go to the minister's discretionary fund. It is through this fund that urgent needs are addressed within our fellowship. All people go through times of crisis and high need in their lives. And every year, Reverend Lydia discreetly channels the congregation's love and care to our community members in need using this fund. Sometimes finances are the stressor. Sometimes it is simply difficult to give oneself the gift of self-care when the future feels uncertain. Modest financial support from this fund have paid for memorial cost, massage and alternative therapies to members with challenging illnesses, car insurance, and groceries. This year, there have been larger and more frequent requests for rent and mortgage support from the economic impacts of the pandemic. Individuals are encouraged to contact Reverend Lydia when they become aware of a need, whether it is for a friend or for themselves. It can be difficult to reach out for this help, especially during the hardest of times. But through this fund, we can offer a helping hand and bring our compassion to life. I encourage you to be generous as the virtual plate passes. This practice of generosity is one of the very concrete ways that we as a community care for one another and in turn are cared for. As our musical reflection begins, we invite you to reflect on what lessons you may have learned in this time of great change. Please write into the chat your reflection to this question. What have you learned this year that has inspired you to live differently in the future? Thank you all for sharing the lessons you've learned. For the work of this fellowship, bringing love, reason, compassion, and justice to this world in the form of the Minister's Discretionary Fund, we dedicate our offerings.
And now we sing. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
As we greet 2021, so much of our thinking about the world we live in and our place in it demands a larger vision. It's fitting to me that our theme for January is imagination, because when our faith tradition calls us in to live each of our 7 principles with integrity, it also calls upon us to use radical imagination. The kind of imagination that doesn't just encourage us to consume stories that drive us forward to better futures, but also the kind that disorients our default assumptions about the world, pushes our conventions, and pulls us into the sacred of the present, no matter how troubled it may be. A kind of imagination that is ripe with a spiritual wisdom that doesn't just harp, improve the world, but commands itself into being. Afrofuturism and its long, rich history of reimagining and envisioning futures that have yet to exist is of the radical kind. This morning, we're going to explore the prophetic nature of Afrofuturism and how many of its forms can not only expand our congregational commitment to racial justice and understanding, but also grow us spiritually. By inviting, we reckon with the beliefs, the habits, the practices that we've been living with to cultivate new ways of relating to ourselves and to one another, making that sacred space for the emergence of a brand new way. As a white woman, it's very important for me to admit to all of you that while many tenets of Afrofuturism and its movement greatly intrigue me, some concepts can be quite confusing and sometimes even uncomfortable. So you may be asking, what is Afrofuturism? When did it start, and what wisdom does its imagination have to offer to the world? Afrofuturism is a movement that encompasses this wide world of imagination, and that includes speculative fiction, movies, fashion, comic books, music, and many other forms of creative expression. But in all of its unique forms, questions are posed about the Black experience of the future. Poet and sociologist Dr. Eve Ewing describes Afrofuturism as this: the simple premise that Black people are going to continue to exist in the future. But she also is wise to note that this simple premise is actually much more complicated, because Afrofuturistic visions of the future, all of them arise from the experience and perspective of African diasporic communities, people who throughout history, especially in our country, have always faced the threat of annihilation. The premise that Black lives continue to exist in the future is still radical today. One of the ancestors of Afrofuturism is the celebrated jazz musician and cultural hero Sun Ra. Sun Ra grew up in Alabama during the Jim Crow South, but he did not see himself as a child of this world. In early adulthood, he experienced a rebirth where he describes visiting space where it was revealed to him that he is a child of Saturn, sent to Earth on a mission to heal the world through music. Sun Ra's experimentation with sound and technology created a genre-bending music, and he even made a science fiction film called Space is the Place. As a revolutionary musician and thinker, Sun Ra's imagination was radical, reimagining his very existence, his own identity, to question reality, break down the racial paradigms that our society functions under. And today, his legacy still continues to push us and our society forward to imagine futures full of Black empowerment. Another ancestor I want to tell you about of Afrofuturism is science fiction author and icon Octavia Butler. Her stories feature Black women playing powerful protagonists whose uniqueness helps them survive dystopian circumstances. Today's opening words were from one of her books, the one that presents a futuristic religion that's assembled around change and the need to be flexible in response to that change. And Haley is going to share more of Octavia Butler's wisdom later in the service. Some of you may recognize the 2018 blockbuster film Black Panther, which has more recently brought Afrofuturism into the mainstream. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you do. It's an epic tale of an African superhero from a futuristic and alternative uncolonized kingdom called Wakanda. Like other cultural and scholarly productions of Afrofuturism, it presents this parallel universe of Black existence in the future, but also the present, that examines the past to inform our now. But the very space and place of Wakanda asks our imaginations, what would the world look like if slavery and colonization didn't happen? The leading scholar of Afrofuturism is Yatasha Womack, and she notes that one hallmark of Afrofuturism is its very understanding that race itself is an invented technology made up in the 17th century, a collective delusion that has traumatically carried into the present with the creation of institutions, practices, beliefs, and narrations to justify horrific oppression and keep us separated from one another. Afrofuturism is a radical form of imagination in that it attempts to resolve past and present racialized trauma by envisioning a future, a world where our historic tragedies might be transmitted or they might be transformed. It's a spiritual wisdom that tells us the violent and oppressive regimes that exist today are failures of imagination and community. And as a movement, it pushes society to dare each one of us to imagine another world is possible. The pursuit of alternatives is urgent, my friends. Will these alternatives continue to be soul destroying, soul expanding? I think that when we can lean into the idea of centering the imaginations of Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, we just might find promising alternative paths of radical truth-telling and abundant compassion to make all of us more whole. The nature of our faith is covenantal. And if we are to return to a practice of honoring covenant, we must remember that to be in solidarity requires more than just empathy. It also requires imagination. And now, I am thrilled to introduce you to Kid Astronaut, a time and dimension traveling musician sent to this dimension to remind us all to love. Kid Astronaut's mission is to inspire humanity to live from a higher vibration, which can propel our world community to new places where every single one of us is able to create and explore new ideas. For Kid Astronaut, the wisdom of Afrofuturism is this: dream big, be patient, and forgive quickly. This is his song, Mother.
How's it going? Listen to the rain outside your window pane. It is falling, it is falling. Listen to the air, way out there. It is blowing, it is blowing. Sometimes I am a giant, I might get loud and strong. Sometimes I'm quiet, like a road not traveled on. Sometimes I am a riot, sometimes I am afraid. Sometimes I know that it is just another day. Ooh, 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 ooh. Listen to the earth, a mother having birth. She is giving, she is giving. Listen to the fire, it burns and brings me higher. Things are changing, oh, things are changing. Sometimes I am a giant, I might get loud and strong. Sometimes I'm quiet, like a road not traveled on. Sometimes I am a riot, sometimes I am afraid. Sometimes I know that it's just another day. Ooh, 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 la 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 la. La 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 la. Yeah. La 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 la. Ooh. La 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 la. Ooh. Ooh.
Thank you so much for sharing your talent and your music with us today. Each new year brings with it a hope for change and progress. This year especially, we hope desperately for progress of just in terms of vaccines and social justice, and even just the progress of returning back to school and work without worry and fear. Hope and progress are the key words for progressive religious communities like Unitarian Universalist. But I've begun to wonder if they're enough. These words tend to be used in an attempt to assuage white middle-class audiences to look into a better future and perhaps work for a better future without fully encountering the realities of the present. Furthermore, these words don't tell us what to do when society seems to be hopelessly regressing. Hope and progress fail us when we see the return of white supremacy into the mainstream, something many had thought we left behind decades ago. They fail us when religious nationalism becomes the deciding voice in the lives of many. When 100 years ago, it was assumed that this type of religion would quietly die out. But whenever the white middle class has been imagining an ever brighter tomorrow and slowly becoming disappointed or delusioned at its timid arrival, marginalized and oppressed communities have been fighting not just for their tomorrows, but for their todays. And I think that we can learn from this fight. In the parable of the sower, Octavia Butler uses Afrofuturism to teach us lessons of survival and planning for an uncertain future. The protagonist of this book, Lauren, a 15-year-old Black girl, found a way for her people to survive in the present while building bridges into the future. To do this, she required faith, community, and action. Lauren's father was an evangelical preacher, but she understood that the promises of this old faith, as she had learned them, wouldn't be enough to carry her into the future. So she created her own religion, where the anchor of her faith was change. Of God, she says, God is pliable, trickster, teacher, chaos, clay. God exists to be shaped. God is change. Lauren's God was interactive. People have the power to shape it just as it shapes those who interact with it. A belief in this God allowed Lauren to be a co-creator of her own reality, shaping her world into what it must become in order to preserve life. This faith became the cornerstone of her present and the path into her future. As we enter this new year, perhaps like Lauren, we need to reevaluate what ways our faith may need to grow and change so that we can do the work of preserving and creating life. For UUs, I think it's time we reevaluate our unspoken but deeply felt love of individualism. Individualism doesn't help us fight for the survival of our communities, nor can individuals themselves survive without their communities, something I think isolation has taught many of us. Community is key to our survival. When faced with the option of trying to survive by herself or admitting people into her group and making herself vulnerable to thievery, pain, and betrayal, Lauren chose community. Community comes with risk. It asks us to give when we may feel empty. It asks us to be aware and vigilant on its behalf. It asks us to take in those we don't understand or maybe even fear. But community is a survival strategy. Not only because there is safety in numbers, but because when we think communally, we think about how our actions have effects that ripple ever outward. When we think communally, we think about systems that may benefit us, but work towards the detriment to others in our community. We think beyond our desires and our comforts and consider the bigger picture. But we do more than just think. Survival is impossible without action. Progressive people are often fine with taking action, but we are impatient with the results. This impatience often leads us to disappointment and a waning of our passion and desire to act. To guide us past this block, UU Reverend Rebecca Parker suggests we begin by encountering the here and now as if we are standing on holy ground. Rather than waiting for some brighter future to hold all of our promise, we encounter this earth and this day as good and worth loving. And whatever this earth and this day bring us, good or evil, just or unjust, in Reverend Parker's words, when we meet each day with gratitude for what it is, instead of weariness for all that it is not, we can engage in compassionate care for the present realities of suffering, injury, and injustice that call for an active response. Or, in Lauren's words, we pray working, pray learning, planning doing, pray creating, teaching, reaching, pray working. And now let's pray by singing.
Thank you, Haley. And now I invite us into our time of community connection and that time of sacred sharing. If you would like to share a joy or concern, you can raise your hand using that button in the participants window, and Dawn will unmute you. Or you might even see one of those pop-up windows asking you to unmute yourself. If you prefer, you can share a joy or concern in the chat window by sending a chat to everyone. And then Dawn will read out loud what you send us. And when you do share, whether it's by voice or by chat, we'd love to hear your name, where you live, and briefly tell us what is in your heart today. And I will put a stone in our sacred waters on your behalf. Dawn. And for the individual on the phone, I'm putting one more stone in for you, as well as one more for each of us, for any of the quiet joys or sorrows in the sacred stillness of our hearts. Beloveds, may we remember that what we share with one another, our strengths and our struggles, our celebrations and our griefs, whatever we share out loud or in our hearts is sacred. Spirit of life and love, fill our hearts with gratitude and compassion. And from this holy place, may our community surround each one of us with tender love and care. May it be so. And now I invite you all to sink yourself softly into Kid Astronaut's song, Before It Runs Down.
Hello again. Thank you very much. All right, here we go. Guess I never understood love. I was taking it for granted. Time shows the best of us, but I learned it also takes the best away. I miss my best friend. Could have sworn that we were brothers. Nowadays when I see you, I react like we don't even know each other. But that's how this goes. Sometimes life won't be easy, but I still have hope that we'll figure this out. And I'll make the most of the time that I'm given before it runs down. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I miss my grandmother. Wasn't there to see go, but I hope that you're smiling as I play my songs out on the road. And I don't have the answers to why this life must end, but I know that it's not what you get out. Said it's all about what you put in. And that's how this goes. Sometimes life won't be easy, but I still have hope that we'll figure this thing out. And I'll make the most of the time that I'm given before it runs down. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how this goes. Sometimes life won't be easy, but I still have hope that we'll figure this thing out. And I'll make the most of the time that I'm given before it runs. Ooh, before it runs down. Before it runs down. Yeah. Yeah. Before it runs down. Before it runs down. Before it runs down. Runs down. Thanks.
Thank you, Kid Astronaut. And let's extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. And now, let us go forth and imagine the most of the time we are given before it runs down. A time of hope and healing, a time of peace and justice, and a time that channels our radical imaginations to break us all free. Blessed be.